welcome to Kalavira Vegan School. My name is Halima and today I'm going to show you how to make a vegan biryani rice the way my mom does it. Now before we start, a small disclaimer. This is not a traditional Indian biryani dish that you will often see with layers of curried vegetables and rice. This is just a rice dish alone where it is flavored with lots of herbs and spices. It is usually seen in lots of Indian events like weddings and special celebrations. Now my mom's way of making this is a little bit of an infusion with Southeast Asian culture as well because we are based in Singapore. So if you notice, for our first ingredient, we are actually going to use some pandan leaf. Pandan leaf is seen predominantly only in Southeast Asian food. We will be using this. We will also be using some mint leaf and lots of onions that's been chopped up for flavor. And we'll also be using quite a significant amount of tomatoes, which also gives a bit of sourness to the dish. And for a bit of heat, I've already chopped up, sliced up some chili padi here. If you don't like your dish to be so spicy, you can always just use normal red chilies. But I would really not encourage you to leave out the chili out of the dish altogether because it does give a really nice color and flavor to your dish as well. Now, other than that, we have our spice mixture here. I've got some bay leaf, a cinnamon bark, some clove, star anise and cardamom. Now if you find that you don't have them individually, you can always use garam masala mixture that you can just pick up at most supermarkets, or you can just pop down to Mustafa or just some little shop in Little India to pick up these spices, or the garam masala mixture if you want. And other than that, we are also having some aromatics here. This is actually garlic paste. It's supposed to be yellow in color, but it has oxidized and has turned green. So don't be worried, it's still usable, it's just that it has been oxidized. And I've also got some ginger paste here. No biryani dish is complete without some rose water. Now rose water is basically an extract from the rose flower. You can get it in a bottle. Sometimes it looks like this. This comes in a glass bottle. Some of them comes in plastic bottles. It's very inexpensive. You can just pop down to our Little India Serangoon Road and grab a bottle, and it lasts a really long time. It's got really strong aroma, so you just want to use it sparingly and not overpower your dish. And of course, the star attraction, no dish is complete, no biryani rice is complete without the rice itself. This is basmati rice, and this is very different from your Thai fragrant rice because this is less starchy, it's unpolished, and when it cooks, the grains actually expand and it really becomes nice and long and elongated. And this is one of the trademarks of basmati rice, the ability for it to really lengthen into nice long grains. Okay, so try to get a good quality basmati rice if you can. They are not too expensive. 1 kg goes for about $3 to $4, and you don't really have to use it all the time, just for special occasions. Now I'm going to show you how I'm going to do the dish itself. Okay, I'm going to show you how to put all our ingredients together. First, I've got a pot here, which I've already heated up. I'm going to just pour in some oil. You can use any sort of oil that you like, just olive oil, just normal vegetable oil. Some people tend to use butter. You can go ahead and do that, or use non-dairy margarine as well. I'm just going to add in just enough to saute all my onions as well. I'm going to be a bit generous with it because the more fats that you have in your dish, of course, is more flavorful, but at the same time, it also helps to coat your rice a little bit more evenly. Okay, so if you notice, the oil is already starting to heat up. To this, I'm actually going to start by adding my mint leaf. This is a trick that my mom taught me. She feels that when we add the mint leaf into the oil first, it actually releases a lot of aromas and flavors, and that will actually make your dish a lot more flavorful. So that's what I'm going to do. I've done that. And I'm also going to be adding our pandan leaf, but before I do that, I'm just going to knot it up so that it will be a lot easier for me to remove it later. So I've just got this into a knot, so I'm just going to pop this in as well. And I've got my spatula, so I'm just going to let it saute for a while just to release the fragrance. Okay, so everything is starting to pop. At this point, I'm going to add all my spice ingredients except for the bay leaf, so I'm just going to pop this in. I'm going to bring down the heat a little bit because the oil is splattering everywhere. If you're not very confident, you can always just cover it for a short while so that the oil doesn't splatter everywhere, or you can just keep the heat a little low for a bit. Okay, so I'm just going to let the herbs release the flavor, and then I'll show you how it looks like in like 2 minutes. Okay, now I'm going to put in the onions, but before that, I'm just going to see how my spices are doing. Okay, you know that your spices are ready because you can smell the aroma. And at the same time, if you look at some of the spices, the cardamom especially, it's starting to brown and it's starting to burst. So that tells you that all your spices are ready. So at this point, I'm just going to add in my onions. And just stir fry it, saute it in the oil. If you have a lot of time on your hand, I highly recommend cooking the onions over low heat, because the slower you cook, the more it caramelizes and it releases a lot more aroma. But if you're in a rush, it's really not a problem. You can just cook it over a high to moderate high heat. Okay, so here I'm just going to continue sauteing it. This will take a couple of minutes to become golden brown. Okay, so obviously you can see that I didn't knot my pandan leaf properly and it's already untied, but don't worry about it. This is just a small issue. We will be removing it later before we serve the dish anyway. Okay. How to add the other ingredients, but before that, let's have a look at how our onions are. So if you notice, from the time I've added the onions, they're really browned and they've caramelized, and at the same time the quantity has actually reduced significantly. You might have thought that, wow, it's a lot of onions, but actually if you look at it now, it doesn't really look like that's a lot of onions in there. So to this, I'm just going to put my tomatoes. And I'm also going to add my garlic paste. Yes, the alien looking garlic paste. Don't worry too much about it. And a hefty amount of ginger paste here. Okay. The reason why I want to add my garlic and ginger together with the tomatoes is to ensure that the garlic doesn't stick to the bottom of the pan, because garlic cooks really fast. And when you add it together with the tomatoes, as the tomato cooks, it releases a lot of moisture. So that helps to prevent the garlic from sticking. So I'm just going to stir everything up nicely together. And if you're here with me, you can smell how lovely it is. The smell of ginger and garlic cooking together with caramelized onions, the pandan leaf, the mint, and all the different herbs in here. It really smells heavenly. Okay. So we need to cook this until the tomatoes actually start disintegrating. That's why if you notice, I chop up my tomatoes so that it cooks a lot faster. And if you really want to speed up the cooking process, we can actually add a bit of salt into the dish now. The salt helps to release more moisture from the tomatoes and it will help it to cook a little faster. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a nice pinch of salt inside here to help with the cooking process. So a generous pinch here. Again, don't worry too much. We can always adjust the amount of seasoning later. So just add the salt and just let it cook through until the tomatoes really become a nice paste or sauce. Okay. So if you want, we can just cover it and leave it alone and stir it occasionally. So I'm just going to cover this up and I'm going to show you how it looks like in a few minutes. Now I'm going to check on the tomato and see how it's cooking. Okay. If you notice, it's already starting to slowly disintegrate. Remember to occasionally open it up and stir it, because you still have garlic in there and you don't want your garlic to stick to the bottom of the pan. Now to this, I'm just going to add our chili padi here. Again, if you don't want to use chili padi, feel free to use any other sort. Feel free to use any other sort of chilies that you like, and then you just continue stir frying it, sauteing it in the oil and all the juices of the tomato. The chili padi will disintegrate and it will go really well with the dish. So I'm just going to cover it up again and we'll see how it looks like in a few minutes. Okay, now I'm going to check on the tomatoes and see how they have been cooking. If you see, wow, you can see all the nice steam and aroma coming out. It's really lovely and it has really cooked down. The tomatoes are really disintegrating. If you can actually see, I can just press it down and it's all just melting under my spoon. So it's really nice and soft and very well cooked. And this is what we are aiming for. So at this point, I'm just going to add my water in. So it's about different biryani, different basmati rice cooks at different amounts of water. So for usually it's about 1 cup to about 1.5 cups of water, or sometimes 2 cups of water. You have to read the instructions on the packaging to decide how much water to add. Especially if you soak your biryani rice or your basmati rice, it will usually cook a little faster with less water as well. So just always start with less water first, and then as you go along, if you find that your rice is still hard and undercooked, you can always add a bit more water. But if you go the other direction where you put too much water in, you're going to end up with a porridge instead of a rice dish. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to let this come to a boil, so you can really see all the lovely colors and the pandan leaf and the mint, the aroma of the mint. So I'm just going to increase the heat so that it starts to boil, and once it boils, I'll add the rice in. Okay, so I'm just going to close this up. Okay, it's been about a few minutes since I let the water come to a boil. I'm going to check and see whether it's ready now. And let's see. Wow, you can actually see that it's really nice and well steamed, and the bubbles are all coming up. So this is your rice is ready to go in. At this point, I'm just going to add in 2 bay leaves. If you want, you can add them earlier as well when you put the water in to boil. And what I've done is I've actually strained my rice, and I've also washed it to make sure that the water runs clear and it doesn't have any dirt or grime on it. So just make sure that you wash your rice a couple of times. And in this hot water, boiling water, I'm just going to add my rice in. One of the things you would probably notice is that I'm using a wooden spoon and not a metal spoon for preparing this dish. The reason is because the basmati rice is actually very fragile. You don't want to use a very sharp utensil to break it apart. You want to use something that's a bit more gentle with it. So a wooden spoon or some silicone spatula actually works much better than using a metal spoon. So your rice is in. I'm just going to stir everything and make sure everything is nicely mixed together. And if you have been following us closely, you will realize that we still haven't added one very important ingredient, which is the salt. We just added a little bit earlier to help the tomatoes disintegrate, but you need to add more for the rice to cook. So I've got my salt here. I'm going to just put in a significant amount of salt. Okay, the reason why I want to be generous with the salt is because the rice will be absorbing the salt. So don't be worried if you over season a little bit. The rice will actually absorb the salt, so don't worry about it. One good way to find out whether there's enough salt is actually to just stir everything together, let the salt dissolve, and then you just taste a bit of the liquid. When you taste the liquid, you will know whether it's salty or not. If you find that it's undersalted, feel free to add a bit more salt. Or if you find that it's just nicely seasoned, you can just leave it alone, and later on you can just check on it again. So what I'm going to do now is, if you notice, it's all coming to a nice boil. I'm just going to cover this up, and I will check on it again in probably about 5 minutes, and then we will just occasionally stir it to help all the flavors come together and all the ingredients to mix evenly, and then we'll see how it looks like in a few minutes. Okay, I'm going to check and see how our rice is doing. You can see that it's actually coming together quite well, and it's already starting to dry up. Okay, but if you notice, there's still a bit of moisture in our rice, so we want to keep it at a very low heat and cook the rice until it dries up. At this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my rose water. just drizzle it in. And if you want, if you're using saffron or if you're using some artificial color to get a more yellow golden hue, now is the time to add it in. So once I've added it in, I'm just going to stir it again very gently and slowly so that I don't break up the rice. And if you notice, the color of the rice is starting to change, but it's not completely translucent yet. There are some parts which are still white, which means that the rice hasn't cooked completely. So at a very low heat, all you want to do is just let the rice steam in its own moisture, the moisture from the tomatoes and all the other flavors, and just let it dry and cook through, okay? So what I'm going to do is I've stirred it up. I'm just going to level it, and I'm just going to let it just sit in its own heat at a very low heat. So I'll check on it in a few minutes time again. And at this point, if you find that your rice is still very dry and is undercooked, just feel free to drizzle in a bit of water and just let it slowly steam in its own moisture to cook through. Okay, so I'll see you again in a few minutes time. Okay, I'm going to check and see what's the status of our rice. So let's open up our pot. You can see that the rice now is all fluffy and really nice and beautifully cooked through, and it's also starting to dry up. Really lovely. And if you notice, all the grains are all just individual and not clumped together. So the rice is about done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer this into my bowl and I'll show you how to garnish it. So I've got my copper based bowl here. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to transfer my rice here. Off the heat first. Okay. So I'm just going to transfer this here together with all the other lovely aromas and ingredients and everything. Okay. I'm going to push aside the pandan leaf so it's easier to reach for it. Okay. So just want to evenly mix it up all in here. So if you notice the color, we didn't add any saffron or we didn't add any artificial color, but it has a really lovely natural orange hue to it thanks to the tomatoes and all the chilies that we have added. So it's not really necessary for you to add artificial coloring to give it a nice lovely color, lovely hue. Just adding the tomatoes and the chili padi alone will give you some very nice natural colors. Okay, I think this is enough. I'm going to show you, next I'm going to show you how to garnish our rice dish. Now I'm going to show you how to prepare our raisins and cashews for garnishing our biryani rice dish. So in here, in my frying pan, I'm just going to add some oil. You can use any sort of oil that you like. Again, some mild flavored oil would be good. So I'm just going to be a bit more generous with it. Okay, so once it has started to heat up, I'm going to add raisins here into the oil. Okay. I'm not going to add both of them together because raisins have a high sugar content, and so it will cook a lot faster than the cashews and it will burn if you're not careful. So I'm going to cook them separately. So what I've done is in the oil, I'm adding the cashews, the raisins, and you can hear them starting to sizzle, and you will see that they will actually start to plump up soon in the heat. So I'm just going to bring up the heat a little bit more so you can see that they're already starting to sizzle. Okay, you notice that they're starting to plump up and the color as well is starting to change. So you know that they're going to be done soon. You can use either black raisins or golden raisins. I'm using golden raisins and I think these are good. I'm just going to off the heat for a bit so that I can just remove this and make sure that they don't overcook. Okay, so I'm just going to put them in the side first and just remove them into the same container. Okay, so you can see that they're actually really nice and golden, and it looks a lot nicer than they were previously when they were just dehydrated. Okay, so in the same oil, I'm just going to bring the oil back up to the right heat. Okay, so in the same oil, I'm going to pop in my cashews. Okay, because cashews are a lot thicker, they will take a little while to cook. They won't be as quick as the raisins, so you can just stir them continuously and just watch over them and they will be done as well. Okay, the reason why we want to saute or fry our cashews is because without frying, they tend to be quite soft, but when you fry it, it tends to be quite crunchy, so it really adds a very nice texture to your rice dish. So if you notice, it's already starting to become golden, and that's what you want. If you notice, some of them are already turning quite golden, and that's what you're aiming for. I'm just going to bring down the heat a little bit so that I can control it. Okay, so there you go. Okay, so I think they are about there, nice and golden. Just going to off the heat for a bit. Okay, so if you notice, they're actually very quick to prepare, and they look lovely because once they are fried, they have a nice golden color, which not only adds an element of another dimension for garnishing, but it also makes it crispy, which makes it taste a lot better in your dish as well. Now, some people tend to add the cashews together with the rice once it's when it's cooking. You can also do that, or if you want, you can sprinkle it on top. It's really entirely up to you how you want to go. Okay, I'm going to show you how to garnish our rice dish. So if you can see in this pot, I've already prepared the rice, and if you notice, the surface is actually really nice and dry and actually quite flaky. So this is what we're going to aim for when we are making our biryani rice. To this, I'm going to start adding our raisins. So I just want to spread them around anywhere that you like. If you don't like sweet stuff in your food, just leave it out. If you're feeling very adventurous, you can also actually use other dried fruits like cranberries. So to this, I'm just going to add some cashews. Again, really entirely up to you how you want to arrange it. Feel adventurous. If you don't want to use cashews, feel free to use almonds if you like as well. It's perfectly fine. It works as equally well. And just an Asian twist, Southeast Asian twist, this is dried shallots. I'm going to just sprinkle this on. I find that really adds a very nice fragrance to your dish. And also there's a slight crunch to it, so it's quite delicious. Okay, so just going to spread it all out nicely. Okay, and for just some color, I've got some cut red chilies here. I'm just going to place them around so that it looks nice and very visually appealing. Again, if you want, you can go for green chilies, you know, just something to make it pop a little so that it looks pleasing to the eye. Here, I have some mint leaf. Again, I'm just going to place my mint leaf all over the place, just very randomly, just for the aesthetics. If you want, again, you can chop it up, you can leave it whole, just about any way that you like. And I'm also going to sprinkle some coriander on top, just so that it looks good. Coriander is also a very nice and fragrant herb, which really adds a nice dimension to your food as well. Okay, so your biryani dish is done. I hope you enjoyed this video. For full recipe details, don't forget to visit www.kalavira.com. See you soon.